Consciousness, neuroscience, and the most uncomfortable question in all of science. Where exactly does experience happen? Consciousness feels obvious from the inside. You think, you feel, you are aware. But the moment you try to locate where that awareness actually occurs, the certainty dissolves into something far stranger than almost any philosophical account has managed to capture. Neuroscience approaches this with a cold technical term: neural correlates of consciousness, the minimal neural mechanism sufficient for a specific conscious experience to occur. No poetry, just the engineering layer of awareness. And what that engineering reveals is genuinely unsettling. Here's the first uncomfortable fact. The brain is always active, but consciousness is not. You can see without noticing, hear without registering, process information without any subjective experience of processing it. The question is not what makes the brain active. It is what makes that activity organized in the specific way that produces experience rather than mere processing. That distinction turns out to be enormously difficult to identify. And the difficulty tells you something important about what consciousness actually is. For a long time, the cortex was assumed to be the primary site. That is only partially true. Damage to cortical regions rarely switches consciousness off entirely. It distorts it, fragments it, produces strange partial deficits, but does not eliminate it. Which leads to a conclusion that reshapes the entire inquiry. Consciousness is not a location. It is a process. This is where the thalamus becomes central. And its story is one of the most interesting reversals in neuroscience. Once dismissed as a simple relay station, it now looks more like a central coordinator. Current models suggest that consciousness emerges from recursive interaction between the cortex and the thalamus. Not a signal passing through, but a continuous loop. Break that loop through anesthesia, through specific lesions. And the signal may still exist, but the experience disappears. The lights are on in individual rooms, but no one is home in the building. To make theoretical sense of this, researchers developed competing frameworks. Global Workspace Theory proposes something elegantly simple. Consciousness is information that becomes globally available. The brain runs countless parallel processes simultaneously, but only a tiny fraction gets broadcast across the entire system. Those broadcast processes are the ones you become aware of. Everything else runs invisibly, locally, without ever reaching awareness. Information that stays local remains invisible. Information distributed system-wide becomes experience. Integrated information theory takes a different angle, focusing not on broadcasting, but on structure. Consciousness depends on how integrated a system is, how unified and irreducible its information processing is. An elegant idea with one significant problem. It is extraordinarily difficult to test empirically. Strong theories, weak verification. A recurring theme in this field. The empirical data tends to be counterintuitive. Under general anesthesia, consciousness disappears while substantial neural activity continues. The system is running, but the experience is gone. Volume of activity is essentially irrelevant to the presence of experience. Coma studies push this further. Some patients who show no external behavioral response still exhibit internal patterns consistent with the conscious processing. The uncomfortable implication is that behavior is not a reliable proxy for consciousness. Direct brain stimulation adds another layer of strangeness. Triggering specific regions can produce vivid memories, emotional states, even the eerie sensation that someone is present in the room when no one is there. But stimulation never produces a full, stable self. No switch, no module, no clean interface. Just fragments, pieces of consciousness without the coherence that ordinary awareness takes for granted. Despite decades of research, there is no single center of consciousness, no unified model, no precise measurement of subjective experience. The hard problem: why physical processes produce experience at all? Why there is something it is like to be a brain rather than simply a biological computer remains completely unresolved. Consciousness appears to depend on coordinated activity across distributed networks. Recursive cortex-thalamus loops and high integration. It is not a thing. It is a dynamic configuration, fragile, continuously reconstructed, emerging from complex interactions constantly in motion. Consciousness is not something you have. It is something that happens. And the codebase behind the output is still missing. Thank you for watching all the way through. I really appreciate you being here. Let me know what you think about the ideas in this video, and feel free to share your own perspective or advice in the comments. I genuinely like to read it. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please like the video and subscribe. My hope is to build not just a channel, but a community where people explore meaningful ideas, exchange thoughts, and grow together. See you in the next videos. Bye.